Hello and welcome back to the OnlyAccies preview for this weekend's game against Inverness. Before we get to that, let's look back at our last game, a 1-1 draw away to Ayr. I wasn't able to attend, but Brandon and David watched the game. Brandon, how do you think we played? How do you think the game went on? Is there any other big talking points from that game?
Point wasn't deserved probably. Ayr should have really finished us off with some of the chances they had. That boy up top, is it Adeboye, I don't know his name, was a handful again. I think he was a handful the first game we played against us as well. But no, another game where we've made a team that I would say is weaker than us look better than what they are. And I think that was more down to the style of play we were playing with. We were just, we didn't really take the game to Ayr at all. First half, we obviously get the goal. We go into half time with the lead, but there was nothing really in the game. They probably had the better chances. We go in at 1-0 and then come out the second half, hopefully go on and sort of get a second goal, maybe actually take the game to them a bit more, because the fans were pretty loud on Friday and they were getting behind the team, but they were also given the sort of type of style of play a bit of stick, because it was boring. It was hard to watch, and I think it makes it harder to watch because we know the players have got the ability to be better. It's just that I don't think the style's bringing that out in them. And then Ayr score, they could have scored a few more, and we didn't really threaten them much more after that. So we got a point. I went into the game a bit confident, which usually when I do that, we don't win. So I think I just need to try and start being more negative.
We don't need any.
That's when we seem to get the wins, apart for the Inverness one that I predicted.
Brandon hit the nail on the head there. I thought it was dead flat. I thought we started the first half quite well. I mean, we were on the front foot and we dominated, but it seems like every time we take the lead, we've settled for that one goal. Foot came off the gas then, and we don't look to add. And like Brandon said, Adeloy did us a good favour. I mean, I think they were saying in the commentary he could have had 5, definitely 3 in the first half anyway. Some of them were like crazy sitters. You know what I mean? We got really, really lucky. And I think it's no coincidence that we conceded early in the second half. I think the backroom team at Ayr United went in and said, listen, we need to press this team. They're no playing with any intensity, that their foots came off it. We can get back in, and they start strong and score almost instantly. So I don't think that's a coincidence at all. I just think we're so flat. We're, again, like we have been for months, aimless. There's no style of play. There's, like you said perfectly there's players that we know can play, and they're not playing that way. Now, there's a point in the second half where the Ayr guys are just absolutely running at us with the ball, and we've got players that can do that. We just don't do that. We don't move the ball well at all. So, it was quite a flat game, and I think we did nick a point in the end.
There was some injury news as far as I'm aware. Scott Martin coming off with a hamstring injury. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Obviously, Jamie Hamilton coming off late on as well. Is that anything to fear, do you guys think, from watching the game? That when they came off, how they came off, did anything look nasty?
The Martin one looked like what it is. It was his hamstring straight away. I think I speak for every Accies fan where you just get pure frustration when you've seen that, because we'll probably touch on later, but it was just too intense, and you seen it happen and you just knew exactly what it was, and it didn't look like it would be light. It looked like a bad one. So
it seems to be similar types of players that keep getting recurring injuries, and it's the players that seem to put the most in. As David touched on earlier, there's no intensity in our game. You go back to the Queen of the South game, all the players played with a sort of bit of fire in their stride. We're passing the ball about really well, we're moving really well, we're pressing them constantly, and we know we've got the players that are capable of doing that, which makes it so frustrating for me, because if we play that type of football that we played against Queen of the South, I know we only won that game 2-1, but it suits the players so well because they've got that ability, and it's just so flat. And it's annoying, especially with the sort of formation we're playing, the sort of style of play. It's annoying when you know you've got players capable of doing so much better and playing with a different style, and I just don't think it suits them at all. And ultimately, players are getting injured when they do up the intensity, because majority of the time the intensity is non-existent. So it's no surprise that the players that are getting injured are usually the ones that put a bit extra in.
Well, listen, let's talk about those injuries then. There was an article came out today saying that Stuart Taylor saying that Scott Martin could be out for weeks with this injury. We've heard that before with him. He said Jamie Hamilton's getting assessed. It's touch and go whether he'll actually feature against Inverness at the weekend. And then a few hours later, there was another article released about Matthew Shields and how he was saying they can't rush him back. They need to take time with him. And it does seem a bit contradictory, rushing Scott Martin back. And I'm not saying that rushing him back is the only reason he's picked up an injury, but it'll play a massive part in it. Stuart Taylor said before, Scott Martin shouldn't have played as many minutes as he got today. He didn't think he'd play as much, and now he's picked up another injury. Brandon, I know it's something that you've obviously been frustrated with a lot before, is how we deal with injuries in the squad. And this seems like, to me, another example of that.
I mean, both articles really just contradict themselves massively. And the thing about the Matthew Shields one is, I know he was on the bench against Ayr, but we've came out and says, we can't rush him back. Did we not just play him in a game against a junior team for his first game for OnlyAccies? So he's been out with a long-term injury, and you put him in against a junior team who are going to, no doubt, if we put a bit more fight in, they'd have kicked us up and down the park. So we're saying we can't rush him, but we've already flung him in the deep end already for 90 minutes. And it's really frustrating, because you feel for these players that are constantly getting injured and constantly getting not like relapses of their injuries, or like different injuries, because we are rushing them back. And in my opinion, that's just sheerly down to how thin the squads have been over the past few seasons. It's a recurring theme with people that have long-term injuries. The ones that have been out long-term, it's reoccurring constantly. Look at your temps. You rush him back several different times, and it just constantly reoccurs. Sean Want, he persistently seems to get rushed back after being out for a long period of time. You never get buried in. It's always full tilt for 90 minutes and whatnot. You never just sort of bed them in. Scott Martin, again, he was out for such a long period of time, and he's rushed back in. And like I touched on with the sort of intensity side of things, these are all players that majority of the time are ones that will give you 100% and will give you all this fight. And it makes you wonder, what are they doing in training? Is it because intensity is so low? Is it because the type of training doesn't suit the type of player they are, meaning that their rehab isn't going to particularly work well because we're training with this low intensity, but then when they go in the game, they've got the fire in the belly, they really want to play, and that's why their injuries are reoccurring, because they are thrown right back in there. So there's a lot of different points, but it's really frustrating to see, because it tends to be the players that probably make a slight difference when they are in the park that always get the recurring injuries. But it's just, if we had a bigger squad, we had bigger depth in the squad, then you think that these injuries wouldn't happen and reoccur, which is
yeah, that's a really interesting point, David. I'll bring you in that as well, because it was a point made on Twitter, I think by John Patterson, who said that it's maybe the fact he knows that a 20% fit Scott Martin is better to have in the midfield than a 100% fit Ronan Hughes. It's maybe a case of, as you said, because the squad is so thin, he needs to bring these players back because the quality is lacking. What do you make of that, David?
I mean, it all goes back to that point that I'm starting to see on a weekly basis now. It's all coming down to the lack of preparation. The squad is thin because of that. But, I mean, we've heard the rumours when Stuart Taylor first came in that fitness was spoken about, and he was shocked at how unfit as a squad we were. I mean, that's what's coming evident now. I mean, like you say, intensity, like Brandon said, the slightest kind of ramp up in intensity, and these guys are made of glass. We've heard so many times. I don't know what it is though, but the way that, I mean, if we go back to the Kilmarnock game at home earlier in the season, and they spoke about, well, David Temple started that game and he played the full 90, and they were saying, oh, well, he shouldn't have played today, but he gave us a full 90. That's not a positive. I mean, there's obviously other contributing factors, but that has obviously played a part in what's led to him having to call it quits halfway through the season. So
the exact same when Scott Martin, I can't remember what game it was he was back for, but after the game, Stuart Taylor said the exact same thing. He said he shouldn't have been playing today. We've probably rushed him back in. So why are you doing it?
Aye, I mean that could sound like over dramatic, but in the day, like these are these guys' careers as well. You're gambling these guys' careers. I mean, like it is dangerous to risk these kind of injuries. I mean, you wouldn't like do that if you, for example, had surgery or something. You wouldn't go straight back when you haven't walked yet. Go straight back to running. That's essentially like kind of what they're doing. They're risking these guys' careers, and it's really bad management in my opinion.
It's like John Patterson says. The reason why these players do get rushed back is because the people that are replacing them just aren't good enough. And you saw there's been games this season where we've had 5 on the bench.
Yep.
So it's so thin. The people that are in place of these players, clearly the management know themselves that they're not good enough, hence why they're rushing these players back. So surely the resolution for that is to bring other players in, which what we've been promised. I know we've been promised time after time after time again that we'll bring in players in different transfer windows, but this one we've had a new owner come out and promises that he will be going in his pocket, and as far as I'm aware as well, it will be happening. So I'll go. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Ben. I know we were told several times that it definitely will happen, but I still aren't confident, just because the past few seasons in January and even the summer there, we were sort of begging for sort of certain types of players, and we just never ever got them.
Yeah, you don't really know what to believe. I suppose that's the frustrating thing. As you said, we've been promised stuff, not just signings, but just everything basically for a long time, and it very, very rarely materialises. It's a strange one to go into a transfer window being an Accies fan, having been told by the club, we will bring players in January, we will pay money for them. I mean, I said before, I think on last week's podcast, maybe the one before, that's 2 fundamentals Accies do not follow. Mm-hmm. It's doing business early and paying for players. It doesn't happen. So I'm interested to see what happens in January, if anything. I do think we'll bring players in. I think Stuart Taylor will demand that. And I think John Rankin will demand that as well. Whether they'll be the quality that we think we're getting promised, or whether they'll be worth the money that we will spend on them, we'll need to wait and see, but I'm doubtful.
I need to weigh in here though, because I'm often
he's getting his list's made.
My head's been absolutely rattling with this though, because there's so many things wrong. First of all, with the Colin McGowan statement, I mean, not comparing in any way, but the point I'm making is the same as when Newcastle got bought over and everyone knew that they've got the money they've got. Any team who they inquire about a player knows the money they've got, and will say, well, it's Newcastle, put a 0 on the end of it. If you're going out and saying, we've got money to spend and we'll spend money on players, you don't broadcast that, because then any team around us or in the league below or whatever, hearing that, we're thinking, right, well, they've just went out and saying they're willing to pay money, so let's see how much they're willing to pay. Like that, I think is bad. Again, bad management behind the scenes. The other thing is I think this will be the toughest, maybe this in the summer, toughest transfer windows we've ever had, because the market will totally have changed for us. We don't have the lure of Premiership football anymore. Brian Rice, if you watched him on Open Goal, he said about when he brought Hakeem Madoffin in, he said the words to him, listen, come here, if you're great for a year, you'll move on. Again, we don't have that lure anymore in the Premiership football. And let's be honest, if you had to write out the 10 teams in the league, we're definitely in the bottom half when it comes to wages. So we're on level, I'd say we're on a level playing field of your likes of Wraith Rovers, Queen of the South, teams like Partick, Dunfermline, Kelly, the Inverness, they'll pay more money than us. Look, for example, Sam Stanton going to Wraith Rovers, that's a good signing. He knows Scottish football, he's done well. That's somebody who could have been someone that we bring into the middle of the park who might have taken some of the minutes off of Scott Martin and prevented the injury because we're so reliant on him. So I think it's going to be really tough because let's be honest, we're not performing well. We're not a big crowd. It's not an attractive club to come to, I don't think. The kind of big thing over the last year was that if you do well, you will be in the window and you will be sent on. But that's not really how it's going to be working for us anymore. So I think it's going to be incredibly tough for them to deliver what they've promised.
Yeah, once January comes around, listen, I'm sure we'll do another podcast focusing all about transfers, and Brandon will have us buying the Wraith Rovers team again, I'm sure. But listen, it would have worked out fantastic. It would have worked out really well. But listen, let's look ahead to this weekend's game against Inverness. Just a quick rundown of their form. In the last 5 in the league, Inverness have 3 wins, a draw and a loss. Accies just the 1 win, 2 draws and 2 losses. So Inverness obviously coming in better form, league leaders as well. We have beat them earlier on in the season. It is worth saying against the odds. Brandon did predict it unbelievably, but against the odds that we did beat them. Do you guys see us repeating the feat? Inverness, obviously, a very, very difficult place to go. They are ruthless in front of goal now. They won 6-1 the other night against Morton. So it's looking tough, but Brandon, do you think it's possible for us to repeat the feat?
It really just depends on how we set up, in my opinion. Like, I keep going on and on and on how we set up, but we've got the players there capable. I just don't think they've shown their capabilities whatsoever. I honestly don't. Queen of the South game, we won only 2-1, as I said, but the Dunfermline game, that was against a sort of poorer side. But I genuinely think the players we've got, we should be doing much better than what we are. And I think people you'd find it hard to disagree with that. Individually, we've got some of the better players in the league, but I just don't think the style is suited to them at all. People are going back and saying, "Oh, yeah, can't really judge Stuart Taylor until he's 2 windows or whatnot," but he's inherited rubbish. But you look at the players, I don't think he has inherited that bad of players. I really don't. The results have been atrocious. Let's not lie. And it's easy to scapegoat it by saying he's inherited shite. But the players are decent. It's just, I really don't think it works in this style of play. And if we go up there and we play a certain style of football with certain players told to do a certain job, then I think we could get a result. But we're not going to do that. We're going to play what is the formation? Was it a 4-2-3-1?
4-3-3 usually goes with in the
4-2-3-1. I'd probably say it is. But I just think this sort of one up top, Moyo up top, his cell, it doesn't work. I know we're saying Andy Ryan's perhaps not fully fit, but I just think you've seen how it worked with him and Moyo and Ryan up top against Queen of the South. It clearly worked, and they've not played together since until starting the game.
Yeah,
as I'm aware, or they've not played up top together since that game. I just think the players we've got, if we play a certain style of football, that actually suits the players, and we've got every chance because Inverness are flying. They pumped Morton 6-1, but I don't know.
Yeah, listen, I don't want to go off on a tangent a wee bit here. I want to bring it back to Inverness a second, but a point you made there, I want to jump on. I was thinking about this the other day. You just said we've got good players, some of the best players in the league in their positions. but we don't have a great team. We've got good individuals. You've got Kieran McDonald, obviously last year, one of the best left backs in the league. You know, you've got previously in the Premiership, you had like Akeem Adoff and Thames. You could even put Augie into this conversation as well. I don't think, honestly, since Alex Neil, we've had a good team of players. We've always had good individuals that, let's be honest, have kind of carried us through, which is really, really frustrating. And I am hoping that Stuart Taylor's the guy to create another team. You know, when he first came in, it's fair to say we were all optimistic about it, despite his lack of experience or record, whatever you want to say. But we were happy with the appointment. I hope he's the guy to give us that again, but I think that's going to be imperative to get Accies back up or to push us further, is to get a good team together rather than a group of good individuals. But listen, let's get back to the Inverness game. We talked about the lineup. Scott Martin, we're pretty confident isn't going to be in. Jamie Hamilton is being assessed, so he's touch and go. Brandon, you want Andy Ryan and Moyo up top. Are you changing to the basic 4-4-2 and going with that, or how would you like Stuart Taylor to set up this game?
It's one of these ones where I think I've said before, if we're playing one of the sort of lower end teams or the teams that I know we're definitely better than, I'd go with a 4-2-2-2. But this one, I would go with a 4-4-2. Yeah, I just think, although Inverness might be top of the league, we've already shown we can beat them. And I don't think, although there is that big divide between top six and bottom six, I don't really think that team by team there's much in it, apart from certain teams being actual teams, like you've touched on there. So, no, I would definitely go a 4-4-2. I don't think, look at the results we've got playing this system that they keep playing. It's not as if we've been we've flourished with good results. Do you know what I mean? So I would go with 4-4-2.
See, I think the points that Brandon made there were really interesting, because I think on technical ability he's right. There isn't a big difference, despite what the league table would show. We really managed Inverness really well when we beat them at New Douglas Park. I don't think they had the majority of the ball, and they didn't really do anything. But I think that's where just that few months later really will show effect. I think the difference in mentality between them and us now, I personally think we're going to get absolutely hammered. I think it will be at least a 3-0. I think it is just going to be a case of they know they would have learnt their lessons for New Douglas Park, and they'll know that, listen, like I've said many times this season, when we concede one, it could be anything. Or when we take the lead, our heads can't take a foot off the gas and leave ourselves vulnerable. So I think it will all be down to mentality, where to get a result like they got against Morton, you've got to be a team that's well gelled, but at the same time, you've got to know you're playing a team that isn't and exploit that. And I think we have the capability of showing that we are not a well gelled team and could be exploited. So I think we've got a lot of vulnerabilities that a team on the kind of form that they are could exploit. So I think it's going to be a tough afternoon. I think Brandon's right, go with the basics and go back to 4-4-2 with the two guys up front. It showed it's worked. Why on earth wouldn't you? But another point is to go back to what we said earlier. Andy Ryan's not featured in the last two games, and it'll be because of total burnout. We've been so over-reliant on him. I mean, I'm trying to remember the game in particular, but it was a game where we were doing the press after, and Taylor was saying Ryan's gubbed or something like that, or he was totally burnt out, or he's played far too many games. So I think we've been heavily reliant, and again, that goes back to the point of the squad. That goes back to the preparation. So I don't know how we're going to approach this one, personally.
That's a few games in a row that Ryan's not started though, so you'd think he would. And as far as I've been made aware, he wants to start.
Mm-hmm.
So I just don't know. He was clearly one of our better players. I don't know why you don't start him. Simple as that. Moyo, you can't drop. I know a lot of people aren't his biggest fans, but you're even seeing...
You're his best mate, aren't you?
I'm his best mate, aye. But you're seeing all these people that are his biggest critics saying that he's actually been one of our better players, which he probably has of recent. I don't know if that's because he wants to call up to the African nations or not, but he's been decent, and he's playing that lone striker role. and he's not really get much support with him. So play somebody else up top with him. We're not going to get many chances against the league leaders. You wouldn't think so. Play 2 up top, and then go back to the basics and have the 4 midfield just sort of have a fairly high intensity in them, and sort of get the 2 centre mids to dig in deep. And you never know, but as David says, there's a lot of vulnerabilities, and if Inverness take advantage, and if we have the setup that we don't want to see, then they've got the capabilities of absolutely harming us.
Well, listen, let's get the score predictions in then. As always, comment yours on the tweet below, just so we can get them involved in our league table prize at the end of the season, as always. David, let's start with you. You said this could easily be 3-0. It could be more. What is your score prediction?
I'm going to go with 4-0. It's not usually my style. I'm usually a kind of stupidly optimistic, but like you say, watching that game on Friday night, and I don't see that kind of level of performance that, for example, Inverness got against Morton coming for us yet, and we definitely have the players for it. Like Brendan said, we've got some quality players. I mean, guys like Josh Mullen, when they signed, we had such high hopes for. Nico Vatanen came with a good reputation. Luke Matheson, Kieran McDonald, even guys like Lewis Smith and all that. Don't get me wrong, I think he's starting to deliver a lot better now, but we're not getting what we know all these guys are capable of. And I think, it's down to the style of play, and it seems like they're reluctant to change that. So hopefully when the window comes, these new guys fit the system better. But at the moment, I don't see that changing, and especially not in the results.
All right, Brandon, what about you? What's your score prediction?
I'm going to wait until I see the lineup.
We can't do that. You can't do that.
You may as well wait till it's half time.
I'm going to wait till after the game, and then I'll make my prediction.
Right, okay.
Can't believe you tried that, by the way. I'll wait till the team comes out. Very good.
I mean, it depends on how we're set up.
Nah, you're right.
It honestly does. Like, I've got 2 scores in my mind. If we genuinely set up in a certain way, I think we'll win. I have a weird feeling in my head that I think we could go and win the game, but I'm not very confident that we will do that. And I think it's just going to be the same boring setup, which doesn't suit the players' abilities, in my opinion. The rest of the fans are. So we'll probably will set up like that. So I'll go 3-0 Inverness.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 3-0 Inverness as well. That was my score prediction. As for all the same reasons you guys have said, if we set up the same way we have, with Moyo up top by himself, Andy Ryan either on the bench or out wide, I can't see it going any other way than Inverness, which is a shame. But listen, you've got our score predictions. As I said, comment yours below to get involved in our league table. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you after the game.